Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Friends, welcome to the Encounter program sponsored by the Broome County Council of Churches. I'm your host today, Mark Kimpland, the pastor at the Endwell United Methodist Church. It's May, the first week in May, and that can only mean one thing: summer camp. And families and children and youth are planning their vacation schedules this summer, which many times includes the blessing of summer camp. And so we are blessed today to have back with us on the Encounter program the director of the Sky Lake Camp and Retreat Center, Matt Williams. Welcome again to the Encounter program.
Well, thanks for having me. I always enjoy coming in and talking about one of my favorite places, and also it makes me a bit of a celebrity when I walk into church later this morning and people will be like, "Oh, I saw you on television this morning."
It's exciting.
It
yes,
is.
It's
so
scary.
A great shout out to the Encounter program.
Fantastic. Thank you. Always love having this time with you each year, just to kind of regroup and kind of see what's new at Sky Lake and what's happening as we look forward. And I appreciate your passion for this very, very crucial and important ministry. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's begin with our viewers and our listeners that are with us today. I understand that Sky Lake just celebrated its 71st anniversary as the United Methodist Camp and Retreat Center earlier this month. Can you kind of give us a brief history on how it all began? How did we get here 71 years later and such things? But in a way that might be something that some of our viewers and listeners haven't heard yet. Can you take us through that?
I'd love to.
Fantastic.
So the history of Sky Lake actually predates Sky Lake itself. We go back into the Methodist camp meeting movement of the region in the early 1800s. And at one point there were 7 distinct camp meeting grounds from Cooperstown to Wilkes-Barre, the original boundaries of the former Wyoming Conference. And they really helped build a lot of churches within the Methodist tradition within this greater Susquehanna River region. And so they kind of, as transportation became better, kind of consolidated. And by the mid-1940s, there were 2 left. There was one in Sidney, New York. If you come off of 88 and you're going to Sidney Federal Credit Union, you drive right past the road that it used to be on, now a housing development. And there was another camp meeting ground in Dimock, PA, which is right near Montrose.
Okay.
And so by that time in the 1940s, the former Wyoming Conference was looking to kind of create one place out in the middle of nowhere. It was, you know, the core values of the former Wyoming Conference became the core values of Sky Lake, and one of those was being out in creation. And both the 2 predecessor sites were being kind of encroached upon, one because they just had a limited amount of land and families were spending a lot of time there, and great on them. And the other one, housing was forming around the edges of the camp. So they wanted some place that could be protected and where people of all ages and abilities could come and just spend time in magnificent creation. And so the legend has that the first female pastor of the former Wyoming, by the name of Ruth Underwood, was serving a small church in McClure and was talking to one of her parishioners, and the parishioner said about the Board of Education at the time wanting to find a centralized site. And they took a drive up to the housekeeper's former employer's estate on top of Tuscarora Mountain, an estate called Sky Lake that was owned by the Willis Sharp Kilmer, the wealthy Binghamton businessman. And legend has it that they scaled the wrought iron gates to the east shore that fateful winter morning. More likely the housekeeper had a key to the gates, but they got onto the property and looked around and said, this is it.
Wow.
And so Ruth Underwood took it upon herself to convince 12 pastors and laypersons to put up $55,000 of their own money to purchase the Sky Lake estate. And they did that with the hopes that the conference would reimburse them. And sure enough, at the conference in April of 1947, the conference did just that. And in June of 1947, the first campers were coming through the gates.
Wow.
Now open, and now, today, open all the time. We intentionally keep them open. They may have rusted open, but we like that we're intentional about keeping those gates open as a signifier of all are welcome.
Wow, what a marvelous story of faith and
Yeah.
vision and all of that. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And here we are 71 years later. That's fantastic.
And so much has happened at Skylake over the years.
Yeah,
You know, just
please,
the
yeah.
number of lives that have been transformed by an experience out in creation, out in intentional, authentic Christian community, and ultimately being invited into a deeper commitment into following Christ into the
Yes.
world and transforming the world.
And that doesn't happen by accident.
No, it doesn't.
That happens intentionally, authentically. It happens
Absolutely.
with a passion and a vision of doing so. Yeah,
Yes.
That's
I mean, that's our vision of equipping people to be able to go back out into the world and share the love of Christ with all those they meet.
yes. Oh, what a great story. That is.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at the 71-year mark now. Why do you believe that camping remains so important, so vital, such an important piece of this puzzle of making disciples for the transformation of the world? Because countless pastors have received their call at Skylake, and church leaders and youth and children. As you said, lives are transformed there. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that environment, the camping ministry, remains so vital?
I think we kind of exude Celtic understanding of evangelism at Skylake. And so we have this idea that we provide intentional thin moments in which people can encounter God. And kind of live into those moments and not poo-poo them, so that people can actually feel the Spirit moving in their lives. One of my favorite all-time stories of a thin moment at Skylake is we had a volunteer who was coming up and taking photos every week back when I was on summer staff in the 90s. Yeah. And he came across a group of junior high campers and their counselors who were sitting on the big boulders overlooking the lake on the east shore, and he struck up a conversation with one of them, and the camper was sharing, oh, it's so great here, and the volunteer asked, well, why is it great here? And the camper replied, well, it's easy to talk to God here. And that's pretty great in and of itself, but the volunteer dug a little bit deeper and
Yes.
said, and why is it easy to talk to God here? And the camper replied without missing a beat, because here God starts the conversation. I think part of it is we intentionally build relationships through the small groups. So a lot of, particularly church camps, are really great at building those connections with one another, of building authentic, lifelong friendships, so that you can grow together, both physically, spiritually, emotionally, maturity, those sort of things, providing those opportunities. So we do cookouts. Do we do cookouts because they're fun? Yeah, they're fun, but it also provides an opportunity for that small group to, one, make decisions, take leadership even at a young age, to provide some opportunities to work together on an activity that they might not do anywhere else in the world. And one, it is a lot of fun, through those memories, that's what builds those lifelong relationships. So I have some friends that I never see in person anymore because we're spread out throughout the world, but we still remain in contact because we were campers together at Skylake. And we had those memories, not necessarily of the activities that we did, but we had the memories of spending time with one another.
Yes.
And that's what I think really makes camp great. I was at a training in Florida in January, and it was rough having to go to Florida in January, but someone had to do it. One of the presenters was sharing about a recent study that had been done about the stickiness of faith. Of why do some young persons stay within the tradition of the church and others don't? And they looked at particularly those who'd been through kind of a youth group program at their church. And they interviewed thousands of people for this. And the one common denominator was that at some point in those young persons' lives who have remained in church after graduation were 5 unrelated adults who had poured their own faith into them, who had spent time with them, intentionally just building a mentor-type relationship. And it could be, the grandmothers of the church who take the kids under their wings and show them how to make Welsh cookies.
Yes,
Not that ever happened to me or anything. It could be the couple that does the Acolyte program at church, that it kind of works with children of all ages to get them involved in it and sharing their own faith through that. And it's oftentimes, I like to think of our counselors and our session leaders who are there with the kids for years and years. Some of the people that have had the greatest impact on my personal faith are leaders from my camp experience as a child and youth.
That's the genesis of the whole, of everything, is that relationship with mentors and such. Yeah. And I know that can you just share the idea of the small group? Absolutely. What can you say about the diversity of how kids and youth learn about getting along with people that might be different than you, and the diversity? How does that play into that also? Have you seen that change over the years and such? Has it enabled people to, especially children and youth, who can live in our own little igloos? But the diversity aspect, has that played a part in the importance of camp, and how is that played out at Sky Lake?
Absolutely. I mean, we come from a very kind of white European tradition.
Yes.
But we have always kind of wanted to embrace those who don't come from that tradition or who come from a different economic background. And so we've been pretty intentional about making sure that our small groups are as diverse as possible. You're kind of limited to who signs up for that session of camp.
Sure.
But within those sessions of camps, we try to help people who are coming from rural areas interact with people from more urban areas. So someone from, Bradford County, Pennsylvania, is interacting with someone from Binghamton. And it could be there's some racial diversity there. It could also be just different educational diversity. But what we want to do is make sure that everyone's safe and that everyone feels that they are heard. I think camp offers a great opportunity, not just at Sky Lake, but really any camp offers a great opportunity for children and youth to kind of try on new identities. So the narrative that was you at home isn't the narrative that you have to pursue at camp. Time and time again, I hear, I just love camp because I feel I can be myself. And that naturally lends itself to embracing diversity within the small group. Of kind of saying, okay, this is who I'm going to be this week, and providing that whole safe environment in which
to explore.
Now that sometimes rubs up against the outside world, and we try to be very clear that the camp camp should be the mainstream. In our opinion.
Right.
But that the whole idea of making sure that people experience a wide variety of life experiences is important to us.
Awesome. Great. That's great to hear. So what role can camp play then in one's life, or maybe even in one's family or church or organization? How have you seen that flush out over the years as to the role? And I'm sure it's diverse in and of itself.
Well, I think the most important thing that camp and retreat centers can do for families and local churches and organizations is to provide a time and place apart. That whole idea, that biblical idea of going away to a quiet place and finding rest is vitally important, especially today. We have a lot of pressures on us. We have calendars, we have political pressures, we have social media pressures, all those things that it's just important to have a place where you can go and be and to be quiet. Not that we're quiet all the time at camp, or even during our retreats, mind you. We are definitely not quiet a lot of times, but to have those reflective moments where you don't have to worry about everything that's going on around you, and to be able to experience something new. Even if it's just a change in schedule, that newness. The number of groups that come in throughout the rest of the year, we're open year round. We even have groups kind of butting up now against Christmas, which is great. Those of us who are on staff, we're not there to make money, we're there to provide a ministry. And so we appreciate the opportunity to serve others.
Yes.
And to have them grow in their faith.
Yeah.
And those opportunities just to fellowship with one another
Right.
are vitally important,
Absolutely.
especially in a place that is, granted, I have a horse in this proverbial race, but I think is absolutely stunning. You know, it's just a gorgeous facility.
Yeah.
We have a little over 900 acres that are for a camper or guest to explore. Well, campers, they always have to have a buddy, but guests can go out and explore. And there are parts of the property that I haven't been on yet.
Really?
You know, and I've been there for 18 years full time, and I've discovered a lot of it. But it's just the vastness and going out. And John Muir, the great founder of the Sierra Club and that movement, you can't be angry and in the woods at the same time. You know,
well put.
Thereabouts. I don't know if I have the quote exactly, but it's close enough.
Yes, makes sense.
So and just being able to get out onto a body of water too.
Yes.
That's all ours. You don't have to worry about speedboats because we're not that large. We have boats like Corkles, which are great little round bottom boats that is actually on the screen now. And you know, getting out and exploring all of creation.
Yes.
We also allow swimming when lifeguards are on duty, and you know, you can always walk around. We have a great little nature trail that circumnavigates the lake path itself, and we have a bunch of lift and learn, so that you don't have to have a nature interpreter with you.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. What an experience. That's great.
Yeah.
Now, last year when we chatted, you mentioned the Sky Lake was implementing a new initiative to help campers better understand the meaning of community. How did that go? Is it still in process? I remember us talking about that last year. Can you say a little bit about that?
It went really well. So we ended up calling it our Hemlock Community Values Program.
Okay.
And it was an idea of, we've kind of noticed somewhat of a breakdown in community within the world. And particularly within the church. We've kind of lost our why. Why are we a church? And it's ultimately about community, of building relationships with one another. Because in those relationships, that's where we believe we find the Holy One. And so we decided upon hemlock because the hemlock tree is pretty prevalent at Sky Lake. And I did have one of our counselors last summer come up to me and said, Matt, I don't know if I should admit this or not, but hemlocks aren't my favorite tree. I said, it's okay, we'll keep you on. But they are many of our favorite trees. One, because they provide excellent kindling and tinder for campfires. So when you're out hiking through the hemlock groves, you know to carry a little plastic bag with you and put the dead branches in there because